Lipat. Okay. So permission to record, everyone. Okay. I need your permission. Please state in the recording. You
Okay.
agree with the recording?
Yes po.
Okay. Sige.
Hindi
Okay.
po.
So any question before we start? So alam niyo na ha, yung topics natin will be population.
Can we revise what we're gonna submit sa assignments, Doc?
Dokas, ano yan?
Can we revise?
Revise. Yes. Okay,
Thank you, Doc.
research will always be a work in progress. Kaya nga ang research, meron tayong volume 1, volume 2, yung iba nga umaabot ng volume 15 just to revise and revise and revise. You can do that. You can always do that, no? According to your need. So it does not mean kung ano yung pre-sent nyo, yun na yung gagawin nyo. By the way, in your action research, it does not need to be the one you presented or the one you submitted will be your topic. No? You can change that according to your preference or according to this situation. You can always do that. What you're doing now is just in fulfillment of your requirements for this particular course. And I suggest that when you think of a topic, it would be better if we start it with the design using an action research rather than the mainstream research. Para as early as now, you can start gathering data na para hindi na kayo papalit-palit. Pagdating ng action research ninyo, ready na kayo, ibibigay nyo na lang yung proposal nyo na ginawa nyo ngayon doon sa magiging advisor nyo. Okay? But it does not mean na yung ginagawa yung proposal ngayon, yun na rin ang gagamitin nyo. You can always change or think of other topics that corresponds to your interest or to the situation.
Thank you po.
Okay, any more problem? Any more question? Maliwanag po ba yung pinupuntahan natin? Hindi naman kayo nalilito.
Maliwanag naman po.
Because research is step dependent. Pagka nalihis ka, hindi mo na masusundan ito. So it is very important. That's why I ask you to memorize this step of doing research para hindi kayo malito. Okay, so if done, can we proceed with the reporting? So let's talk about let me see. I cannot memorize. I think this will be from Bohol Group. We'll start from Bohol Group. Yeah. So we will start with what is population, sample, sampling, and the two major types of sampling design by Dr. David.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. So allow me to share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, very good.
Okay. So good afternoon. So I'll be presenting what is population in research. So in the research context, this is the outline of my presentation. So I'll start first with a definition of what is your population. So in the context of research, a population has three key elements. So it is a group of entities. They all share a common characteristic, and this is something that is of interest to the researcher. So can we say that the population of the Earth is population? Well, yes, definitely. But will it be interesting to any researcher? It would be quite hard. So how about the population of the Philippines? Well, yes, it can also still be our population, but for a single researcher, it's going to be hard for kaya siguro if it's a group research. We can scale it down even further. So we can talk about the specific population of the Philippines. So we can talk about the visually disabled people in the Philippines. So yes, that could actually qualify as a study population. We can even scale it down even further, like let's say the population of visually disabled persons in the province of Bohol. So that would be a good study population. So what then is a difference of a sample? A sample is a representation of the population to be studied. So out of the numerous study population that we have, which is the visually disabled persons in Bohol, we can just generate a sample which we say can be a representation of the whole study population. At the same time, the process by how we do this is what we call sampling. So sampling is the process of gathering subjects from the population to arrive at a representative sample. So your sampling types, it can be two types, like what Doc said earlier. It can be random sampling or your non-random sampling. So what's the difference of the two? So we start first with random sampling. So random sampling is when your samples are taken from the population in a random manner. And in doing so, all members of the population have an equal chance of being included in the sample. And when we do random sampling, which we are able to minimize the various forms of sampling biases. So on the other hand, your non-random sampling is where you have a bias already in hand. So not all members of the population do not have an equal chance of being included in the sample. So case in point, I'll just be talking in advance of the topics of our other reporters. So like, let's say, convenient sampling. So this favors subjects that are readily accessible to the researcher during data collection. Then if we're going to do snowball sampling, this would favor subjects that are recommended by the initial sample subjects. So in summary, your population is a group of subjects sharing a common characteristic that is of interest to the researcher, while a sample is a smaller group of subjects that would represent the study population. And your sampling is the process of gathering a sample from the population, which is divided into your random sampling and your non-random sampling. With random sampling, where all population subjects have an equal chance of being included in the sample, whereas your non-random sampling, where population subjects do not have an equal chance of being included in the sample. So that's my report. Thank you for listening.
Mute ka, Dr. Tim.
Nakamute ka po, sir. Sir, nakamute.
Sorry. What I'm saying is you can always ask your question even at the middle of the discussion para hindi kayo mawala. And before anything else, I would like to give a round of applause to Dr. Amiel for the very good presentation. So any question? Any question? You can ask question. Any question? Dr. Amiel, why do you need to do some sampling? Why do you need to sample your population?
It's more practical, sir, to conduct sampling, especially if we're handling a population that is realistically not could not be realistically studied by the researcher.
Yes. Okay, so most probably in terms of cost, no, in terms of geography, in terms of so many other things, a sample will be more practical to do so that you can count. Population niya sometimes kasi are infinite. Okay, so if you have a population that is infinite, ibig sabihin cannot be counted practically. What you can do is you can turn these infinite numbers or infinite population into a more finite one so that they will be more
Measurable.
accessible. So you can access them. And then with the notion of the samples will eventually represent the rest of the population. Okay? So you will assume that the samples that you take from the population, whatever information that you will get from the samples will also be representative to the whole population. Okay, so that's the good thing of doing some sampling. You don't need to you don't need to study everyone because sometimes population becomes infinite. So all you just have to do is to make them finite, okay? Make them countable, measurable, practical, accessible, and financially uh, available for you. So that's a good thing of doing a sampling. So with regards to the randomization and the non-random sampling, you said a while ago, random sampling is giving everybody a chance to be selected as sample or as a representative. Can you elaborate more on that?
Because sir, if we do it randomly, we minimize intervening or allowing our personal choices to affect the likelihood that one person will be one subject would be chosen over another. So it's purely by chance ang the way that they become part of the sample.
Yes, okay, very good. Sabi din ni Doc Astrid, you want to minimize bias. Yes, very good. You want to minimize bias, you want to eliminate bias because you don't have anybody in mind who are the representative of that population. Meaning to say, you give everybody a chance to be selected. Hindi ka purposive. Hindi yung, si ganito, si ganito, si ganyan, ganyan ang gusto kong maging representative. So, to start with, may bias ka na kasi may purpose ka na kung sino yung gusto mo lang kunin representative, right? But in a randomized sampling method, okay, you don't do that. You give everyone the chance to be selected. And how can you do that? So like, for example, you want everybody in your class to be a possible sample, you don't select. So you make a certain process that wherein everybody will have the chance to be selected. Like, for example, okay, count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And everybody who gets the number 2 will be the one to be included in your sample. So did you know that you will be included in the number 2 group? No one knows, right? So the possibility of being chosen at any given time will be there. So wala tayong pinili. So every one of you would have the chance to get the number 2. So you are giving everyone the chance to be selected as a sample. Okay, that's what we mean giving everyone the opportunity to be taken as sample. Okay. While in the non-randomized, you don't give everyone a chance to be selected as sample. So you just have to select purposibly, accidentally, by snowball sampling, etc. Okay. Are we clear on that? Okay. What's the difference again between a randomized and a non-randomized sample? Anyone?
Randomized samples are representative of the population and
Okay.
can be used to generalize data from the population. Whereas
And the method.
non-randomized
We
sampling
talk about the method. The method.
method.
Okay.
Random sampling.
What is the
Oh.
method that is very unique when you say, I will do a randomized sampling
By chance.
by chance?
Everybody is
Okay?
equal chance
You
of being
give
chosen.
everyone the chance to be selected. Okay? So wala kang pinapanigan, wala kang pinafavorite, basta lahat kayo pwedeng maging sample. That is a randomized sampling or probability sampling. Okay. So any more question for Dr. Emil? Any more question? Walang kindatan. Lahat kayo magtatanungan. Joke lang. Pwede kayo magtanong para ano. So, are we clear on population, sample, and the two major types, at least for now, two major types of sampling, the randomized and the non-randomized. Okay, very good. So, if no more question, let's proceed to a more specific topic, which is the different types or techniques or methods of doing randomized sampling. So this will be reported by Doc Ney.
Good afternoon, Sir Tim. Good afternoon, classmates. Allow me to share my screen. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I am tasked to discuss about random sampling. So the word randomization is defined as a method of sampling in which individual of the population has an equal chance or probability of selection. All members of the population have essentially the same probability of being selected. The main characteristic to be classified to be a main characteristic of randomization. First, the keyword, each individual has equal chance of being picked up into the sample. Second, one individual does not in effect in selection of the other, wherein there is no tie with one another. Third, it is free from subjective factor or personal error or bias and prejudices. Fourth, it ensures that the sample formed by this method may be a representative of the population. So the advantages of randomization, it is an objective method of sampling. It is economical. It permits the application of statistical devices and treatments of data. It maintains the accuracy in the analysis of result, and it is a practical method of sampling. The limitations, though, first, there is no guarantee for representativeness of the population by the method. Second, if it is not done rigorously, it may allow for personal areas or subjectivity. Third, it may not be applicable at all times, especially in educational research wherein the principals or the heads may not permit their subjects to be randomly selected. So, or the subjects may not cooperate. So probability sampling disqualifies the randomization because on the following basis, it qualifies the characteristic. We refer the sample as well as the population. Every individual of the population has equal probability to be taken, and the probability sample may be representative of the population. The observation of the probability sample are used for the inferential purpose. Inferential or parametric statistics are used for the probability sampling. And there is a risk of drawing conclusions from probability sample, and the probability is comprehensive, wherein representativeness refers to characteristic and comprehensiveness refers to the size and area. So the types of probability sampling includes, first, the simple random sampling method, systematic, the stratified, the multiple or double or repetitive sampling, multi-stage sampling, and the cluster sampling. So first, I will discuss on the simple random sampling. So this is one in which each element of the population has an equal and independent chance of being included in the sample. So it is done by using a number of techniques such as tossing a coin, throwing a dice, lottery method, blindfolded table method. So this is a diagram showing a simple random sampling, wherein each individual has an equal chance of being taken as a sample. So the advantages are it requires minimum knowledge of population. Second, it is free from subjectivity and free from personal error. Third, it provides appropriate data for a purpose. Fourth, the observations of the sample can be used for inferential purposes. The disadvantages, though, is that the representativeness of a sample cannot be ensured by the method. This method does not use the knowledge about the population, and the inferential accuracy of the finding depends upon the size of the sample. So next to the systematic random sampling. So this can be done by listing all the elements in the population and selecting every element in your population list. So this follows the formula wherein you consider the population size over the sample size. This is an improvement over the simple random sampling, and this is often used in long population lists. This is used to determine the interval to be used in identifying the samples to who will participate in the study. As I've mentioned, as it is seen in this screen, the formula. Okay, so in this diagram, this would show us a systematic random sampling. So we have 12 subjects here. Let's consider that these 12 individuals are the 12 residents of the OB-GYN department of Galliares Hospital. So first, you would use the formula wherein the interval is equal to the population over the sample. So, for example, if your goal is you want to get four subjects, so how are you going to get that? So 12, which is the 12 residents, divided by 3. So that is, you are going to use the 12 divided by, you want to get 4, so you it would be more of an interval of 3. So you would select which of, is it resident 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you will select first. So in this case, example, it is resident 2. So you would your answer is, you would get the third interval. So resident number 2, so every third, so 3, 4, so you go to resident 5, so this is the second one. Then interval of 3, so resident 8 and resident 11. So that is how you come up with a systematic random sampling. The advantages, though, is a simple method. It is a simple method of selecting a sample. It reduces the field cost. Inferential statistics may be used. The sample may be comprehensive and representative of the population, and observations of the sample may be used for drawing conclusions and generalization. The disadvantages, though, is that it is not free from error, since there is still subjectivity due to the different ways of systematic listing of the different individuals. So knowledge of the population is necessary. Second, the information of each individual is essential. Third, this method can ensure representativeness. And fourth, there is a risk in drawing conclusion from the observation of the sample. So stratified random sampling. So again, this is another method, an improvement of the first two. This is where the researcher divides his population into strata or homogeneous groups on the basis of some characteristics from each of these smaller homogeneous groups or strata, draws at random predetermined number of units. So the number of samples will be proportionately picked in each stratum. That is why all strata are represented in the samples. So there are the different types of allocation. So you have the disproportionate stratified sampling, wherein the size of the sample in each unit is not proportionate to the size of the unit, but depends upon consideration involving personal judgment and convenience. Another would be proportionate sampling, wherein selection of each sampling unit of a sample that is proportionate to the size of the unit. And third, the optimum allocation stratified sampling, wherein refers to selecting units from each stratum should be in proportion to the corresponding stratum of the population. So this is an example of a stratified random sampling. Okay, the advantages are, it is a good representative of the population. Second, it is an improvement of the first two methods earlier mentioned. Third, it is an objective method of sampling, and the observations can be used for inferential purposes. The disadvantages, though, is that it is difficult for the researcher to decide the relevant criterion for stratification. Second, only one criterion can be used for stratification, but it generally seems more than one criterion relevant for stratification. Third, it is costly and time-consuming. Fourth, selected sample may be representative with reference to the use criterion, but not for the other. And fifth, there is a risk in generalization. So another method would be the multiple or double or repetitive sampling. So this is most frequently used for establishing the reliability of a sample when employing a mailed questionnaire, sometimes used to obtain a more representative sample. And this is done when there are questionnaires that are not returned. Hence, the missing data will bias the result of the study. So to eliminate the bias, a second sample may be drawn at random from the non-respondents and the respondents. And this also enables one to check the reliability of the information obtained from the first sample. The advantages are, this sampling procedure leads to the inferences of predetermined precision based on the number of observation. This technique of sampling reduces the error, and this method maintains the procedure of the finding, evaluate the reliability of the sample. Disadvantages, this cannot be used for a larger sample, time-consuming, costly, and more competition, and its planning and administration is more complicated. Then another type would be the multi-stage sampling. It is more comprehensive and representative of the population. Primary sample units are inclusive groups and secondary units are subgroups within these ultimate units to be selected, which belong to one and only one group. And the individuals are selected from the different stages. So advantages, good representative of the population. It is an improvement of the aforementioned methods. Third, it is an objective procedure of sampling, and it is used for inferential purposes. Disadvantages, it is difficult and complex, and it also involves errors when we consider the primary and secondary stages. And last is the cluster sampling. It is a type of random sampling wherein the population is divided into clusters or groups, and then the clusters are randomly selected. So all elements of the clusters are randomly selected and are considered as samples of the study. So as you can see in the diagram, there are different clusters. If you decide on this cluster, so cluster composing of the 5 and 6, so that includes both. So all of that, if that you decided to if that sample, if that cluster has been sampled, so all of its composition of this cluster would then be included. So advantages, it is a good representative of a population. It is an easy method, economical, practicable, and highly applicable in education. Observations can be used for inferential purpose. Disadvantages, not free from error, and it is not comprehensive. So for my reference, the fundamentals of research methodology and statistics. Thank you for your kind attention.
Wow. Thank you, Doc May. Very, very comprehensive. Isang bagsak ng palakpak naman. Very good. Any question? Any question for Doc May? Any question? Again, randomization, the keyword of randomization is?
Chance.
Equal chance of being selected.
Yes. So there are different types. We have the simple random sampling. One of the most common example of simple random sampling is the fishball. Do you know the fishball? Lahat kayo, lahat ng pangalan ninyo, ilalagay nyo sa fishball, tapos bubunot tayo. So did we give everyone the chance to be selected as sample by doing a fishball sampling? When I collected all your names,
Yes.
put them
Yes,
in
po.
the
Yes.
fishball, and then kukuha tayo ng first prize, second prize, third prize. Did we give everyone the chance to be selected?
Yes.
Very good. So that is what we mean by a random sampling simple method. And there are different types more complicated, like the systematic sampling. Systematic sampling, when you apply a certain formula, di ba sabi niya, for the n, kunyari 1 to 100 yung population ninyo, yung number ng class ninyo, and you want to get at least 10 sample from the 100. So you divide 100 divided by 10, so every 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Yung pang 10, kukunin mo sample. Yung pang 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So yung mga natapat dun sa mga numbers na yon, sila yung makukuha mo samples because you applied a systematic process. That's why it's called systematic sampling. The other types like the cluster sampling, the multi-stage sampling, no, you use these ones for more heterogeneous type of samples. Like for example, gusto mong ang buong Pilipinas nandyan siya, but you want to be more specific. One, you want your sample to be more homogeneous or the same. So, sige, ika-cluster mo sila. You put them into cluster and then you apply the simple random sampling or the systematic sampling on the clustered portion. And the multi-stage sampling is the same. So if you want to be more homogenized from a set of different samples, mas gusto mo yung itong mga tiga-Bohol na doktor na kumukuha ng MHM, then yung na-cluster mo na yun mo i-apply yung simple random sampling. So it will be just a combination of different strategies. So Dr. May was able to mention very vividly and very clearly the different advantages and disadvantages of using this type of sampling. Okay, this sampling method, so that you have to consider them always when you are planning to collect your sample. Okay, some of them are applicable for a bigger number of population. Some of them are applicable for smaller groups. So meron yan dapat kinakailangang characteristics na i-consider nyo before using all of this. Okay? So randomization will give at least the idea of having bias in your selection of samples, no? Because you give everyone a chance to be selected as your sample. Any question? Any question? Okay, if not, let's go to the other side of sampling method, which is the non-randomized sampling. So this non-randomized sampling will be reported by Seruel. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. We may share my slides. Okay. So again, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Villaflor, and I'm here to give my report on non-randomized sampling. So it is also referred to as non-probability sampling, and researchers frequently use this method for a variety of reasons that may rule out the feasibility of probability sampling, such as time or difficulty. In such circumstances, non-probability sampling strategies are more feasible. To help us visualize how non-randomized sampling is done, let us imagine that instead of the globe that Dr. Tirol showed us earlier, we have colorful shapes as part of our population. And with non-random sampling, you can only control where and who you look for. For example, we drew a violet circle over the population, and the shapes within our violet shape will comprise our study sample. One scenario we can use this is when you only ever look for participants on a Facebook group. This undefined shape will then cover the people who go in and out of that group. If you don't use non-random sampling techniques in places where informative participants are, you lose its power of choice. For most researchers, non-random sampling is the default sampling technique because they don't have a complete sampling frame. The benefits and weaknesses that come from non-random sampling are tabulated in this slide. And one of the strongest reasons to use non-random sampling is that it doesn't have a lot of requirements. However, findings from non-random samples are hard to generalize back to your population or segment. You have no way of determining a margin of error or estimating how far off from the true or correct answer your findings were as you can with random sampling. And when you are personally involved in choosing who and who not to recruit, you also bring an intentional bias because people have real, emotional, and involving perspectives and outlooks in life. Therefore, we have to know when and how to use non-random sampling. So what are the different types of non-random sampling? You can group the various non-random sampling techniques into three distinct groups: purposeful sampling, quota sampling, and haphazard sampling. Each type has its strengths and weaknesses. Quota sampling is when you knowingly select enough participants to match a known or expected population proportion. So for example, this is our study sample. And for quota sampling, we can think of quota sampling like riding a roller coaster. If there are only 4 seats on all of the roller coaster, you have to make sure to put informative people into all 4 seats to match what you know about your population or segment. This approach is often used when creating or growing your own sampling frame of people to contact, which is commonly known as a research panel. Next, we have the purposeful or purposive sampling, which refers to selecting a sample based on a particular purpose that meets the needs of the study. This sampling method is often used when there is interest in a specific characteristic that only certain people possess, such as a specific life experience or skill. For example, if you want to learn what it's like to order a pizza from the current ordering online platform, then you'd set out to talk to people that have recently ordered a pizza using that platform. You're the only one who decides who is and isn't the most informative participant for your research and set out to recruit them. Another common way to use purposeful sampling is when you want to study a very diverse population or segment. You should be looking for maximum variation to see what patterns and trends exist within each and across each type of person. The next non-random sampling is the haphazard type, wherein members of the population are chosen based on their relative ease of access. So you can see only the ones within the vicinity of the researcher are being contacted. So to make an example, uh, for example, your friends, co-workers, or shoppers at a single mall which you contact in your research are ill examples of haphazard sampling. Such samples are biased because researchers may unconsciously approach some kinds of respondents and avoid others, and respondents who volunteer for a study may differ in unknown but important ways from others. There are some common variations of haphazard sampling, namely convenience sampling, voluntary response sampling, and chain sampling. For the first variation, we have the convenience sampling, which refers to selecting a sample based on availability and is probably the most common variant of haphazard sampling use. It is when you recruit participants that are easy or fast based on your limited resources. For example, if you care about understanding what it's like to use public transportation, you can wait at the bus station and talk to whoever is there. Convenience sampling is limited by the number of resources that you have. If you have a lot of help and time, you can actually cover a lot of distance or participants. And the next variation is about the voluntary response sampling, where you let people opt in or self-select themselves to participate in your studies. This happens when you have a way to get contacted by potential participants, like posting a recruitment link on your company's website or sharing a general survey link on your company's social media. In this type of sampling, people participate because they're motivated or interested in what you're studying. This approach is similar to putting up mailboxes wherever you're trying to recruit. Whoever notices and cares about enough about the mailbox will use it, while others might see them and do nothing. We may use this approach to hear from very vocal or passionate people or those who identify with the purpose or questions of our study. And the last variant of haphazard sampling I'll be presenting is the chain or the snowball type, which is when you ask current participants if they can suggest or recommend other people that might be interested in taking part of your research. This is a very effective approach if you are working with very small populations, such as a startup, or when recruiting from niche populations, such as wanting to learn from a very specific type of dentist who uses a specific type of dental software. It's also an effective way to grow the number of people you have access to. And as a summary, random sampling is without doubt very useful. But what you get with non-random sampling is the power of choice. Instead of leaving things up to chance, you are taking ownership of the finite resources you have and making a clear decision on who should participate in the research. With random sampling, unless you're contacting a large portion of your sampling frame, you have to hope that your sample is representative and informative. And with that, I end my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Doc Roel. Isang bagsak na palakpak naman sa napakagandang report. Okay, very comprehensive. Okay, any question for Doc Roel? Any question po? Again, randomized sampling is all-purposive. Ibig sabihin, you don't care about who will be selected. Basta meron kang something in mind na itong group of samples, ito yung eco-collect ko. That's purposive. I want all who are women with this weight. Parang meron kang hinahanap. Okay, so yung quota sampling naman is basta kung sino yung unang 100 na dumating sa room natin, sila yung may include sa sample. So, meron kang mag-establish ka ng quota, at least 100 ang kukunin ko, kahit sino pa yan, mapabata, mapamatanda, kahit hindi naman particular dun sa hinahanap mo, they will be included in the sample. So, you're not randomizing that. There's no probability of giving everyone a chance. While though the snowball sampling is something like you use in a very rare cases, like for example in a case study or in only mga 4 lang yung may ganung sakit sa Pilipinas. So kunyari nasa Pampanga yung isa, punta mo yung Pampanga, tapos tatanungin mo, meron ka pa bang alam na may ganitong sakit? Meron po, meron tayo sa Bohol. Pupunta ka sa Bohol, tatanungin mo yung nandun sa Bohol, meron ka pa bang kakilalang may ganitong sakit? Meron din po, meron po sa Mindanao. Ganyan. So that is a snowball type of sampling. So it will direct you from one case to another, which is common in a very rare situation or smaller group of samples. Okay? So, any question? Any question po? Any question? So, you all agree?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So, my next question then is, when can you say that you have enough sample, that you already have enough sample in hand, that you can proceed with your method? Anyone who encountered the same question before? Nung nagpe-present kayo ng inyong mga papers, tatanungin kayo ng panel, what is your sample size? What is an
Doc, I think it
adequate
belongs-
sample size?
Doc, I think we determine, depende sa prevalence ng disease, for example, tsaka kung ano yung gusto nyong power sa study nyo.
Yes. So, well, there are different types or different ways wherein you can decide on the size of your samples. No, so determining your sample size can be based on this value para ma-guide ko kayo. But generally, we usually accept it 30. If you have a bigger population, no, hindi naman rare yung case mo, we usually see 30. Parang nakasanayan na natin, 30 can be a good representation of a population. But if you want to be more scientific or more standardized, you can use the following ways. Okay, first is this Lubin formula. This Lubin formula is a systematic process. No? Meron kang formula na gagamitin para you can identify the adequate sample. Kasi palagi kasi tinitingnan, especially in the quantitative, experimental type of design, sample matters. Okay, but in qualitative, in descriptive type of design, sometimes sample doesn't matter. Okay, kung ano yung meron, kunyari in action research, pinag-aaralan mo yung mga nurses nyo sa emergency room, 5 lang naman yung nurses nyo doon. So it does not meet the criteria of having a 30 samples, but yet they can be true representative of your study. So you settle with the 5 number of samples. Okay, so no need for getting the adequate sample, like for example in your action research. Now, but then if there's a need to, then you can use this following strategy. Again, this Williams formula. It needs a formula for every 100,000 population, for example, kung gaano kalaki yung population mo, and then you compute kung ilan yung appropriate size. Okay. The next one is percentage. You can establish your own percentage. Ito yung sinasabi ni Doc Cas kanina, yung Stubbins formula, wherein you are going to, it depends also on the power. Yung sinasabi niyang power. We will learn about this power na ganito, yung p-values or confidence limit, ganyan. We will talk about this one sa statistics ninyo, don't worry. But it depends on your objective, again, the power of your research. So that is involved in Stubbins formula. But then if you want to just determine, so among this population, I just want to get 20% of the population. So for example, you have 100, then you get 20 samples. So this is called the percentage type of determining your sample. You can also use a quota. Quota again, if kunyari for every 1,000 population, gusto ko mga 40 lang ang kukunin ko. So that's what you're going to do. So there's no hard and fast rule of determining which one is adequate. So it depends upon you kung gusto mo ng ganito. And for the more standard one, you can also use the Newman principles. Wherein it says that for every 1,000 population, you can get to make an adequate sample, you just have to get 30% of 1,000. If your population is 10,000, get 10% of it, then that will be an adequate representation. If you have a population of 150, get 1% of that population, and that will be enough to represent your population. Okay. Others will be your Crutchy-Morgan. Crutchy-Morgan will be a tabular type of method. Like for example, if you have a population of 1,000, you only need to get 278 samples, okay, to become a true representative. Okay, if you have, example, 2,000 ang population mo, you just need to get 377. Kung 30 lang yung population mo, you just need 20, and so on and so forth. This is the Crutchy-Morgan reference. So your qualitative isomorph, your isomorph meaning to say if you keep on getting same answer, so it doesn't affect the result anymore, then it's time to stop. Okay, so stop if you have you keep on getting the same answer. So this is what you call your qualitative isomorph. Okay, so any question? Any question with population sampling and samples? Because if none, we will go to proceed with any question. Did I hear anyone from you? None? So let's go to the methods of collection. Okay, so ito na yung next nating problem. Paano natin i-collect yung data? So there are different types of or ways of collecting your data. So let's proceed with the next presenter. Sino na nga ba mag-present?
Sir, Paranaque Group po.
Yeah. Pero sandali. Yung meron bang magpe-present doon? No.
Collection, iba yung collection.
Oo, yung collection. Data presentation report, sabi ko din. Kay Edshil kasi data presentation na. Let me research. Oh, wala. I think kay Doktora ano ito? Pero ni Doktora Rochelle, ni-reassign natin kay Doktora Mangodada, kay Doktora Vanes, no? Yung isa?
Under din po sir, ano po, sa data collection po.
So data collection. Okay. So I'm sorry, I was not able to assign one. So let me just deal with it. Ako na lang discuss po. Dami nyo kasi litong-lito na ako. Pinipilit kong i-extend yung topics eh. But anyway, there are many ways on how you can collect your data. No? So, data collection, meaning to say, these are the different ways or techniques that you can gather your information. So, the most commonly used strategies in data collection will be your test administration, or you want to get the information by using questionnaires. No? You can also do surveys, document review, you go back to your medical records. Okay? In cases of retrospective study, okay, you have to go and review documents. You can also interview people to get the answers or the information that you want. You can do your observations, sabi natin kanina, if you want to observe a certain behavior, di umupo ka lang sa isang tabi, pag-aralan mo yung group of people, and then you report. Okay, if you want it descriptive type. But if you want it in a quantitative type, maybe you can record measurements among this group of people. Okay, so that is observation. Focus group also, oral histories, experiments are some other ways of doing your collection. Okay. So what are the different sources of data again? First, the existing records. Example are your patient's charts, or the self-report techniques. Self-report techniques will be your questionnaires, your interview, observation, and experimental. Okay. So for each and every type of collecting your data, there are advantages and disadvantages that you have to take note. Like, for example, when you do an interview, one of the advantages of doing this one is you can elicit a response, okay, immediately. Kasi kausap mo na siya eh. So hindi ka na mag-aantay ng sagot. Right there and then you can get the response. Okay? Not everybody also can fill out a questionnaire. Like for example, sa mga no read, no write, okay, it is better to verbalize your questions. Ano po sa tingin nyo yung ganito? Kasi hindi kayo sinasagot pag nagbigay kayo ng questionnaire kasi hindi na pala sila marunong magbasa, hindi sila marunong magsulat. So they will not respond to your question. So in an interview, this is one of the advantages. Okay, they can respond immediately. No need to write them down. Okay, and so on and so forth. So there are advantages to that. There are also disadvantages of doing an interview. Like for example, it is very time-consuming. So, minsan, pag nag-interview ka, gusto pa si Starbucks kayo magkita, magdi-dinner pa kayo, mag-buffet pa kayo para lang makausap mo yung interview. So it is sometimes very costly. Okay, and then the interviewer has no choice as to the time, the place of the interview. So, depende yan sa ini-interview mo kung kailan siya po pwede. Again, so these are disadvantages of doing an interview. In your observation as well, there are different advantages. Okay, inexpensive, subjects are readily available naman. You just lend yourself to use recording equipment and then record mo. Ikaw lang mag-isa. So one-man team, kumbaga, ikaw ang gagawa ng lahat ng recording. So it is easier to do that. But the disadvantages includes the time and the duration of an event cannot be predicted. Hindi mo alam kung kailan mangyayari yung observe mo. Okay, you have to wait for an event to occur. Presence of observer may influence the subjects. Subject has bias, and so on and so forth. Okay, when you do your questions, these are example of questionnaires, an open-ended question. Again, sa open-ended question, saan natin usually ginagamit ang open-ended question? What type of design?
Qualitative.
Qualitative, okay, because they have to explain the phenomenon or they have to describe the event, okay? So multiple choice questions also, you can do that when you're doing a questionnaire. So to what extent are you expected to confirm the new guidelines to a great extent? And so this is what type of design, measurement?
Quantitative.
What type?
Descriptive type.
And the measurement will be the scale of measurement. What type?
Ordinal.
Ordinal.
Yeah, can be nominal because you just put them into group of great, moderate, or slight, or it can also be ordinal because meaning to say great is better than moderate than the slight. So it's okay. So, but these are type of scales that you can utilize when you're doing your questionnaires. Okay, cafeteria questions, no? Rank or order. So this is your ordinal type of scale. Then you get the information about all these things. Okay. Course questions, rating questions. Rating questions, this is pay scale. Yeah. Now, you're after na ma-collect mo lahat yung data mo. What's the next step that you're going to do? You have a lot of data on hand. Galing-galing mo, sipag-sipag mo, ang dami-dami mong nakuha. What's the next step?
Organize.
Categorize
You're going
and
now to
organize.
present your data. Okay, so you are here. Ang dami mong nakuhang result ng questionnaire mo. But does this mean anything? Can you interpret? Can you give me analysis? Or can you at least give me any information about this one?
Researcher burnout.
Yes, except burnout. But anything else?
Disorganized.
Disorganized. So meaning to say, useless. It does not mean anything, right? Regardless na napakadami mong nakuhang data, if you will not be able to present it in a way that it can be interpretable or can be analyzed, then everything that you work for becomes useless. Okay. What if this data, these are a group of data that are not presented very well, and I decided to present it in a way na ginanito ko siya. Anong mas marami kang masasabi? Ito o ito?
Organized data po.
Okay, of course. When you put this one, you know that there are pellets. Okay? There are a lot of numbers. There are different colors. Okay. Hanggang doon lang ang kaya mong i-describe dito sa data. But if you organize them in such a way that it can be interpretable, it can be analyzed very well, you can see the details, then there will be more information that you can collect. And now you are ready to make conclusions or analyze the situation. So you can see there is 1 pellet for 1, 2 pellet for 2, 3 is colored red, the pellets are round, 9 has the most number, okay? So you made this raw data into a presentable one, okay? Then it becomes more interpretable, understandable, and now it has meaning and it will become useful. Do you agree with that? Do you prefer this one or the raw data? Do you prefer a
Organized.
Organized
okay,
data.
so that you can analyze it properly. Okay, so there are different methods wherein you can present your data. Number one, you can narrate it, you can make a story, just describe what is happening. Or you can present them in a tabular data. Like for example, you have 1,000 samples, okay, and you are measuring the hemoglobin level of each of these 1,000. So meron siyang 130, may 90, may... So iba-iba. So you cannot understand this one, not unless you will present it in a way wherein siguro gawin mo from highest to lowest, no? Or you get the average or the groupings na hemoglobins with 100 to 120, ilan sila, and then you group that particular hemoglobin level. So in that way, you are presenting your data in a more interpretable or easier way to understand it. Okay, so that's a tabular. You can also use graphical and your chart. So this will be presented and reported by the next reporter. Okay, are we clear on that? Do you have any question on how we can collect your data and how are we going to present them. Okay. Any question? Any question? None? If none, let's proceed to the next reporter.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Abat from Paranaque Group. Today we are tasked to report about data presentation and its different ways of presenting data. Next slide, please. First, I have to define first what is a data presentation. Next slide. Data presentation is defined as the process of using different graphical formats to represent two or more data sets so that an informed decision can be made based on them. A good data presentation is important because it will serve as a powerful communication tool that can simplify the data by making it easily understandable and readable at the same time, while attracting and keeping the interest of its readers and effectively showcasing large amounts of complex data in a simplified manner. This also helps researchers better understand their data and find patterns within it that would not be apparent without visualizing them firsthand. There are 4 different ways of presenting data. Next slide, please. First is the textual or the descriptive presentation or the narrative type. Next is the statistical data presentation. Third is the tabular, and the last one is the graphical data presentation. This will be further discussed by my other group mates.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Edgil. So any question, general question on the idea, on the importance of having a good data presentation? So very well explained ni Dr. Edgil, no? Can you go back 2 slides? Yeah, okay. It becomes easily understandable, readable, and at the same time will attract and keep interest with your readers. Sa tingin niyo ba may magbabasa sa research niyo kung watak-watak at gulo-gulo? Okay? Pero kung maganda yung presentation mo, titignan pa lang niya yung data kahit hindi niya babasahin yung research mo, tinignan lang niya yung table na interpret na niya kung ano meron kayo. So it will keep your reader interested with your work. Okay, so this is the most important thing why you need to present your data properly. Okay, any question? Isang bagsak na palakpak kay Doc Edgil. Yeah. Okay, so let's proceed to Doc Angeli.
That's me, Doc. Dr. Mangundato po.
Ay, kay Doc Banes na pala ito napunta na.
Yes po. So
Okay.
for the first type of data presentation, this is the narrative. This is the textual method or descriptive type of presenting data using words, sentences, and paragraphs. So it doesn't use tables and charts. It includes enumerating important characteristics. So pwedeng from mag-enumerate ka lang, no? From first to the second, third, fourth, and ganon. So significant figures and the identifying features of the data. So it does not involve tables, charts, or graphs. It is usually used in qualitative data presentation. And the data collection here is usually through interviews and survey questionnaires. Next slide. So the narrative data presentation has advantages and disadvantages. So for the advantage, it provides deeper meaning using words. So you can use words to emphasize and to create imagination in your readers and help the reader to use imagination in visualizing the situations. So the disadvantage is this is prone to subjectivity, and further interpretation may depend on the readers. Okay, so next slide. So when to use and not to use this narrative data presentation. So this narrative data presentation is not suitable in large data. It is best used for simple data with a few categories. It is recommended in small and simple sample, and it is best used in field or sociological research, case studies like that. So, yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Vanes. Isang bagsak ng palakpak. Ganda. So, again, for each and every type of this presentation, you have to take note of the advantages and disadvantages. So especially this narrative. Narrative is not suitable for large data. So, siguro kung mga 100 na data, hindi mo naman pwedeng isa-isahin yung hemoglobin level ng 100 na ano, di ba? Na sample. So, siguro mga less than 5. Okay, na pag inilagay mo naman sa table yung 5 na samples, OA naman masyado, di ba? Lilima na nga lang, nilagay mo pa sa table. So, this is best described na lang na si student number 1 is like this, student number 2 is like this, 3, 4, and 5. Pero more than that, I think that will make your narrative very confusing. So might as well use the other forms of presentation, which is your tabular or your graphical. So again, your narrative is not suitable in large data. They are best for simple data with just few categories. Like for example, male and female. There are 5 female and there are 3 males. So kung ganun lang i-present mo, that would be best presented in narrative form rather than putting the 5 males and 2 females in a table or in a graph. Parang OA masyado naman yun. So again, small and simple sample is for the narrative one. And it is usually ginagamit natin ito sa mga qualitative type of design. So wherein mostly ang mga topics dito yung social sciences. Okay. Any question for Doc Banes? If none, so let's proceed to the next other way of presenting data, which is your tabular. Again, I repeat, there are 4 types or 3 major types actually of presenting your data. You can use a narrative, tabular, and graphical. So nandito na tayo ngayon sa tabular. Okay. Doc Alice, Doc Ann, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Alisa Ganda. So I'll be presenting the second method of data collection or presentation, which is the tabular presentation method of data presentation. So this is a systematic and a logical arrangement of data in the form of rows and columns with respect to the characteristics of data. So it is an orderly arrangement which is compact and self-explanatory with objectives to present the data in a simple form, to save space, to facilitate comparison, as well as statistical analysis, and to reduce the chances of errors. So tabular presentation can be classified into 4 kinds. So qualitative, classification is done according to attributes. So for example, social status, physical status, nationality, etc. Quantitative, if we make use of quantitative or numerical data such as age, height, income, etc., which are numerical in form. Temporal classification, if we make use of categories according to time, which may be in hours, days, weeks, months, years, etc. And spatial, when the classification is done on the basis of space, such as country, district, state, etc. Next slide, please. So in a tabular presentation, data are presented in rows read horizontally and columns read vertically. So for example, here in table 4.1, tabulating data about literacy rates. So it has 3 rows for males, females, and the total, 3 columns for urban, rural, and total, giving us a 3x3 table, giving 9 items of information in 9 boxes called the cells of the table. Next slide, please. So what are the essential parts of a table? So found in this slide is table 4.5 as an example, showing to us the essential parts of a table. So first we have the table number, which is assigned to the top of the table or at the beginning of the title of the table. It is assigned for identification purpose. So generally, table numbers are whole numbers in ascending order. So next is the title of the table, which narrates about the contents of the table. So it has to be clear, brief, and carefully worded so that the interpretations made from the table are clear and free from ambiguity. So it finds its place at the head of the table, succeeding the table number or just below it, as seen in the previous table. So the third part is the caption or the column headings, which is found at the top of each column in a table column to designate the headings per column. Next is the stub or the row headings. So like the column heading, each row also has their own designation, which is the row headings or the stubs. So a brief description of the row headings may also be given at the left-hand top in the table to give us the main row heading or the main stub. Next, we have the body of the table, which is the main part containing the actual data. Location of any one figure or data in the table is fixed and determined by the row and the column of the table. Next is the unit of measurement found in the table, which should always be stated along with the title. And if different units are used for different rows, they must also be stated along with the stubs or the captions. Next is the source found below. So it is a brief statement indicating the source of the data presented in the table. If more than one source is used in the data, all the sources must be cited below, and they are generally found at the bottom of the table. And finally, there is the footnote or the note part, which is in the last part of the table, explaining the specific feature of the data content, which is not self-explanatory and has not been explained earlier. So for example, if there are abbreviations in the table which are not, which cannot be stated since it is long, they can be placed in the footnote. Next slide, please. So how do we construct a table? So to construct a table, it is important to learn first about the essential parts as previously discussed. And when put together systematically, these parts form a table. So the most simple way of conceptualizing a table is to present the data in rows and columns along with explanatory notes. Tables should include only essential data. Do not duplicate data by presenting it both in text and in table or figure. And all the tables must be cited in the text. Next slide, please. So the title of a table should be in accordance with the objective of the study and provide a quick insight into the table. A footnote should be given only if it is needed. The size of the columns must be uniform and symmetrical. Headings and subheadings should be free of abbreviations. If abbreviations would be placed, they should be placed in the bottom part in the footnote or in the note section. So there should be a clear specification of units above the columns. For example, if percentage or population of any unit of measurement are used. Next slide, please. And finally, for the indications for use for tabular presentation of data, tables are often used for reporting large or extensive numerical data in an organized manner in order to, number one, make complex data simpler. Second, to save space. To facilitate comparison, to facilitate statistical analysis, and finally, to provide a reference of data. That could be my last slide.
Okay. Thank you, Doc Ann. Very good. Very, very good. Very detailed. Any questions? Wala na akong pwedeng itanong pa. Okay, again, except for indications for the use of your tabular data, okay, expectedly, if you have more than 5 or a very large number of data that you're going to report, and tabular presentation would be a better option of presenting it, okay? So you can report extensive numerical data in this one. Just make sure na always don't remember the title, the table number, ha? And sabi nga kanina, when you do this one, you don't need to repeat the values, but you still need to provide, sabi mo kanina, Doc, you still provide explanation about this table. You cannot just leave table alone. So you have to next slide nga daw. Next slide. I think on the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, there should be at least you provide some explanation to your table pa rin dun sa text mo, but you don't need to individualize all the results. Okay, parang you describe your table. You still have to provide a narrative, but not exactly one by one or very specific. Okay. Yeah. So be very particular with the different parts of your table, ha, para maintindihan. Kasi meron tayong mga simple table lang. Can you go back to your sample, Doc Ann, ng table? Meron kang table kanina. I think on the first, yeah, sige, yan na lang. So this is a complicated type of table, which is cross-tabular ang tawag natin dyan. Wherein yung, like for example, yung gender. So hindi lang yung gender, merong male, female, tapos yung workers may main, marginal, and total. So meron pa rin classification, sub-classification. So take note of all those techniques, no? So you can present a complicated data in just one single glance in a simple way. Okay, ito yung cross-tabular na tinatawag natin. So there are many informations that you can get, okay, from this one. So any more questions with the tabular presentation? Isang bagsak naman na palakpak kay Dr. Very good, very good, very good. Any question? None? Let's proceed to the third type, the graphical and the chart presentation by Dr. Rochelle. Okay.
Hello, classmates. I would be
to ask a question, ha, para right there and then, para hindi niyo makalimutan at may explain natin hanggat kaya natin. Okay. Dr. Rochelle, sorry. Please go ahead.
Ay, okay lang po. Good morning po kung nasan ako ngayon. So, I will just give an... Po?
Nasaan ka?
Sa tabi-tabi.
Okay, sige. Kasi
I would give a brief overview of the graphical and chart presentations, examples of which will be discussed further by my group mates. So graphical and chart presentations are visual representations of data designed to make complex information more accessible and understandable. They utilize graphical elements such as lines, bars, pies, and other symbols to convey quantitative information. These presentations are widely used in various fields, including business, science, education, research, to communicate trends, patterns, and relationships between data. Next slide, please. So, graphical presentations generally refer to any visual presentation of data, which include graphs, diagrams, and maps. They depict the relationship between different variables. Common types of graphs include line graphs, bar graphs, scatter plots, and histograms, while chart presentations are a specific type of graphical presentation that involves the use of visual elements like bars, lines, or slices to illustrate data points. Charts are typically more structured and standardized in their format, examples of which are bar charts, line charts, pie charts, and radar charts, to name a few. Next slide, please. So, characteristics of graphical and chart presentation. Actually, these are the advantages of using a chart or a graphical presentation. So, it provides visual representation of data, making complex information easier to understand and interpret. It provides clarity and simplicity by simplifying complex data sets, allowing audiences to grasp the key insights quickly and easily. It provides comparison between different data points, trends, or categories, enhancing the understanding of relationships. And the visual elements in charts engage the audience more effectively than raw data, increasing audience interest and information retention. It also recognizes patterns, trends, and outliers within the data, aiding in more insightful analysis, and provides effective and enhanced communication of findings, especially when presenting to diverse audiences with varying levels of expertise. It also provides a visual basis for decision making by presenting information in a format that is accessible and comprehensible. And there are different types of charts or graphs that offer flexibility to choose the most suitable format for the data being presented. The disadvantages, um, it can be misleading because simplification in data may lead to oversimplification, potentially overlooking nuances or details in the data. It's also prone to be subjective in individuals, and individuals can perceive the same chart differently, and it has a great potential for misinterpretation, and there is limited detail. So, next slide, please. So the difference of using this between other types of presentation, graphical presentations differ from textual methods by relying less on written descriptions and more on visual elements. They provide a more immediate and intuitive understanding of data, while in a tabular presentation, while tables organize data systematically, graphs and charts transform numerical data into a visual story. They are particularly effective when emphasizing trends, proportions, or comparisons. So, in summary, graphical and chart presentations play a crucial role in modern data communication. Their ability to convey complex information in a visually appealing manner sets them apart from the traditional textual or tabular methods. That's it po. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Rochelle. Baka madaling araw na dyan. Nantok ka na siguro. Anyway.
Yes,
very
no,
good.
madaling araw. Naduduling na ako sa report. Sorry.
sorry. Anyway, isang bagsak naman na palakpak kasi apakaganda ng report ni Doc Rochelle. Okay, any question? Any question po? Anything that you want to ask or any comparison with the tabular and the narrative? You want to clarify? Okay. So it's been summarized very well, no? So yung graphical is more visual, no? So parang isang tingin mo pa lang naintindihan mo na kung ano yung sinasabi ng data mo. Okay. If none, let's proceed to Doc Gina. So Doc Gina will be talking about the different types of graphical and chart presentation, specifically pie graph and bar graph.
Yes, sir. I'd like to apologize. Kulang po yung PowerPoint ko, but I'll be discussing the advantages and disadvantages also. Sorry, sir. Hindi lang techie.
It's okay. It's okay, Doc Gina.
So pie graph, also called a circle chart, shows the component parts of a whole. So it summarizes a set of nominal data or display the percentage distribution or the different values of a given variable. So the circle is made up of multiple segments representing different categories, and the area each segment takes up in the circle is proportional to the frequency of the category it represents in the data set. And sometimes we also see the exploded pie charts. So these pie charts are wherein one segment is separated from the rest of the graph for the sake of emphasis. So what are the advantages of a pie graph? Pie graphs display relative proportions of multiple classes of data, and the size of the circle can be made proportional to the total quantity it represents. And it summarizes a large data set in visual form. So it is visually simpler than other types of graphs, and it permits a visual check of the reasonableness of accuracy of calculations. However, it has its disadvantages. They do not easily reveal exact values, and many pie charts may be needed to show changes over time. And they fail to reveal key assumptions such as the cause, the effect, the pattern. And pie charts can be easily manipulated to yield false impressions. Next would be the bar graph. So the bar graph is either horizontal or vertical. So it has the height or length of each bar and is proportional to the frequency of the value they represent. So they are used for categorical variables, discrete variables, or continuous variables grouped in class intervals. So it has three parts: the axis, the labels, and the bar. The axis is the y-axis for vertical bar graph, or x-axis for horizontal bar graph. And the scale are the numbers along the axis. So those are the labels. And the bar is the bar itself. So it has several types. It can be horizontal, vertical, double bar, or sidebar. So what are the advantages of a bar graph? They show each data category in a frequency distribution. They display relative numbers or proportions of multiple categories, and they summarize a large data set in visual form. They also clarify trends better than do tables, and they estimate key values at a glance. However, it also has its disadvantages. They require additional explanation and they can also be easily manipulated to yield false impressions, and they fail to reveal key assumptions such as cause, effect, or patterns. That's it, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Doc Gina. Isang bagsak na palakpak. Hinahanap ko lang. It is a graphical way of presentation pero wala kang graph na pinakita.
Sorry, sir, inedit ko, hindi pala napasok doon sa last group na presentation namin. Sorry.
Anyway, so any question po? Any question? Let's go back to your pie graph. Yeah. So let's just visualize. Si Doc Gina di naglagay ng graphical presentation. Anyway, so
Pero sa isa, sorry. Hindi ko pala ma-share slide. Sorry.
Okay. So imagine a pie graph. Okay. So a pie graph has different parts, di ba? It is divided into pie. So each area represents a value. Okay, but this value are what? What type of value? Do you think it can present a value that is infinite?
Exact.
Yeah. A pie graph has a limited use because the quantity or the amount in there is not exactly presented. Okay, so it's usually it is presented in percentage, diba? So it is more of a qualitative or a quantitative way of presentation. Parang it is more of a qualitative way. Okay, so there's no exact numbers that can be presented in there. Puro approximate, 20%, 30%, which represents 100% if you take a look at the whole pie. Tama? Okay, so one disadvantage, again, of a pie graph, this can only be used for smaller number of variables or classifications or categories. Because if you have more than 10 categories in a pie chart, you now defeat the purpose of presenting it very, very well. Because imagine mo yung pie mo, napakaliliit na. Ang liliit na ng hati mo. Kunyari yung pizza, ang liliit na ng hati mo. So it goes to a point na you cannot, you cannot identify the areas na. So it is not designed for more categories. Okay, so this is a very simple way of presenting categories lang siya. Okay, so can Doc Ann? Yan. Okay.
Thank you, Doc Ann. Yung na-edit ko. Sorry.
Para ma-visualize natin. So this is one way, this is one way of making your reader be interested with your results kasi by graph, by visual presentation. So again, so eto, makikita nyo, imagine if your categories is more than 10. So ang liliit na ng hiwa ng pie mo na yan. So ang pangit-pangit na, or it cannot be interpreted very well. Okay. So it is for nominal type of data. Okay, probably percentage distribution, values. Okay, so it does not show the exact amount, no, for that categories. Okay, so any question with using the pie graph, and it is usually presented in different colors, no? So make a legend also. Okay, kunyari for example, yung blue represents monopoly. Kung hindi mo siya maila-label within the chart, kasi kunyari napakanipis na nung pie mo, you have to result with the legend. Okay? You should always provide a title also for your graph, your number, graph number, or as well as your title. Okay, so let's go to your bar graph. Bar graph is just like your pie graph, but bar graph can accommodate multiple or larger number of categories. Kasi pwede mong kahit gaano kahaba yan, pwede mong ilagay. No? Not like in the pie chart that it is very limited in categories. So it is represented by a horizontal, or it can be presented in vertical way. So pwedeng patayo, pwede rin siyang pahaba. So the height of or length of each bar will represent value, or is proportional to the value of the information you are getting. Okay, so habang mas mataas, you assume na mas madami yung number of data that is present there. Okay, so the problem with using bar graph is also for categorical variables or discrete variables, no? So mostly qualitative type of data pa rin, because they do not give you the exact amount of that bar. Kunyari, hindi mo alam. It is only presented in percentage. Okay? So like for example, ito, yung frequency mo, kung hindi mo pa sinulat dyan na 22, hindi natin alam na it represents the number 22. So at least we assume that it is bigger, or nasa around 20 ang count mo na data na nandyan. So it's not quantitative. So more on qualitative, so that you cannot get the exact number, just like the pie graph. Okay, so horizontal, vertical, double bars. You depend, the value or the number of data present in there will depend on the height. And take note that the base has a uniform width, regardless of the amount of data that is present. So hindi tayo nagdi-depend sa width ng bar, kundi yung height. The height will represent the approximate number of data that is found in there. Okay, it's not represented by the width, because you have a uniform width dito. Okay, so which will set or differentiate it with the next type of presentation, which is your histogram and your frequency polygon. Okay, very good. So, di pa yata natin papalakpakan si Doc Gina. Very, very extensive. Maganda yung kulang lang siya sa nawala sa PowerPoint yung graph niya. Okay, any question po? Any question? Again, pie graph and your bar graph, more on nominal type of data. Can be ordinal because hindi siya exact yung number niya doon. Okay. Any questions? Yeah. So it is also very important to select the way of presentation. So you take note always of the advantages and disadvantages and its appropriateness for its type of data. Okay, kung what type of data you are presenting. So if done, let's go to the other type, the histogram and the frequency polygon by Doc Mark. Yeah.
Afternoon po, doctors. I'm Dr. Luen Mark Visaya, and I'm gonna be discussing about histogram and frequency polygon. So histogram is a great way to show continuous data, like for example, weight, height, and time. It also allows us to grasp important characteristics of the data at a glance, like for example, central tendency, spread or dispersion, symmetry, tail length, and presence of any gaps or spike. So important to note that we must not be confused between a bar graph and a histogram because again, as Dr. Tim has said a while ago, a bar graph is used to display or to show categorical types of data, while in contrast, a histogram is used to show continuous type of data. So a good clue to look for is that a bar graph would have gaps in between the bars and while his bars. So what are the parts of a histogram? So for its x-axis, this represents the bins and covers the entire range of data. So bins, also known as class intervals, are created by partitioning the data into equally sized intervals. And the range of a bin would represent the interval in which the data points fall. It is important to also put into consideration size of the bin as a higher level or a wider bin would obscure certain details about the data, while a very narrow bin would also introduce noise into the presentation. For its x-axis, this would depict the bin's raw frequency, percentage, or probability density based on the type of histogram. So the higher the bar would usually signify greater concentration or the greater number of data points within that interval or bin, whereas a lower one would indicate lower frequency of data points. So what are the questions that a histogram would answer? So I enumerated here the certain some of the answers. No? So it is used to answer where is the center of the data or the measure of central tendency, what is the spread of the data, as well as what is the range. It is also used to answer the question, what is the shape of the data? For example, symmetric, is it skewed to the left or to the right? Is it a uniform type of data, or are there multiple modes, or is it a bimodal type of data? And also can be used to differentiate shapes of a histogram. So we can see here the normal distribution, or what we call an unimodal or symmetric. It also is reminiscent of what we call the bell curve in statistics. We also have here what is called a right skewed distribution or positively skewed. We have also a left skewed distribution or a negatively skewed. And we also have a uniform type of distribution or equal spread. So we can see here that there is a uniform frequency of data with no peaks. It can also be used to show the modality of the data. So we have here a unimodal type of data, meaning it has only one mode. In contrast, there is also certain types of data sets which presents two different types of modes, like what we see here. And also it can be used to differentiate if the two modes are uniform, meaning that they have modes or non-symmetric type of distribution like what we see here, or the non-symmetric bimodal distribution. So again, as I've said before, it can also be used to display the central tendency or of the data. So here we have the symmetric type of data, which means that the mean, the median, and the mode are equal. And we have the right skewed or positively skewed, wherein the mode and the median is skewed to the left, meaning the right skewed distribution would be is pulled to the right. And also we have a left skewed type of data wherein the mean is less than the median in the mode, and we can see it as a data set which has the tail pulled to the left. A histogram is also a great way to compare two data sets, as we can see here. So we must also keep in mind that in order for data, we must have the same x values and also in size. So it is when using a histogram, we are usually not trying to find a precise correct answer about the number of modes, or rather we can use the histogram for a quick glance, or it allows us for a quick but not necessarily precise estimation of the number of modes. And we also have a frequency polygon. So in general, histogram, it just differs because it's a line graph of class frequency plotted against a class midpoint. So this can be obtained by joining the midpoints of the tops of the rectangles in the histogram. So the points would be, again, at the top of the histogram and put at the center of the bin, as we can see here. Different data points plotted at the top of the histogram at the center of each of its bins. The distribution over a continuous scale, much like a histogram is. So, however, there are rules in making a frequency polygon. So, first, um, as such, so it is not a rectangle or a triangle. Another rule is that the be plotted at the center of each class interval at the given frequency. So, for example, here we have a table of values ranging from 0 to 100 with the frequency of 5. So, we plot 5 at the y-axis here, and we must put it on the x-axis at the 50th value. So, it's between 0 and 100. Another rule would be that the coordinates of a frequency polygon are joined using a straight line segment, and we must not connect them using freehand or a curved line. So as like this. So this is a wrong type of plotting it. Again, it must be a straight line from one point to another. A frequency polygon is also a frequency diagram, and we must not draw a bar chart or a vertical line diagram, as they are not distinctly frequency polygons. So the only thing that we can draw with the frequency polygon is a histogram, just like in this example. Okay, so what are the key points? Histograms and frequency polygon are two of the most intuitive ways of representing the shape of data sets distribution along a single numeric variable. Represent where the data are relatively more common, and the of the data within each bin changes relative to the numeric variable. It also allows us to quickly approximate center, spread, and shape, as well as to identify whether there are outliers in the dataset. And the bin selection is an important step because it can insert subjectivity and bias into generating the histogram. It can also help to try it. So it can also help to try several different bins or different bins before settling on those that you think best represent your data. Because again, an overly large bin may obscure details about the data, and an overly narrow bin would also introduce noise into these are our references. Thank you po.
Yeah. Thank you, Doc Mark. Yan. Isang bagsak na palakpak, baka makalimutan na naman natin. Okay, thank you for that extensive report. Any question? Any question po? Doc Mark, can you put your first slide? Can you go back to your first slide? Yan. Again, just to compare your histogram and your bar graph, your bar graph is more qualitative, your histogram is more quantitative. No? So particularly for continuous type of data. Kasi its height and width represents a value. Okay? And hindi katulad sa bar graph na there are spaces. So yung spaces na yan does not represent value. No? They just represent categories. Not like in histogram, yung base niya meron siyang value from 100 to 150, 150 to 200. So alam mo talaga kung ano yung exact data that is present in a histogram in comparison to a bar graph. Okay, bar graph has spaces simply because the width or the basis does not represent so much of a value, not like in a histogram. And the histogram, again, is for quantitative and can be easily converted into a line diagram, or it will be connected with that so that it becomes a polygon, frequency polygon, and a frequency polygon. There are a lot of information that you can get quantitatively, even the amount per each graph, as well as the tendencies. Yung line graph mo, anong tawag doon? Yung trends. You can easily see the trends, okay, by using a histogram. You cannot do that in a bar graph. Okay, so if you want to show the trend as well as the values in between, you can easily use the histogram. A frequency polygon will just be a connection. Silbi neto is you want to see the area under the curve that will represent 100%. Kaya nga sabi ni kanina, hindi mo pwedeng i-connect yung first dot to the last dot because that will not represent the total area under the curve, because the total area under the curve is expectedly to be equal to 100%. Okay? So any question with the use of histogram and frequency polygon and how you can differentiate it with the other type, which is the pie graph and the bar graph? So malinaw na ha kung kailan nyo gagamitin. Continuous, discrete, qualitative data and quantitative data, there are more appropriate type of graph that can be used. Hindi lahat ng graph ay pwede niyong gamitin. Still has its indications. No? So take note of all those. Any questions? So if not, let's proceed to Doc Cas for the line chart and the stem and leaf plot. Okay.
I'll share my screen. Good afternoon. I've been asked to discuss about the line chart and the stem and leaf plot. So for the line chart, it draws a continuous line between all the points in the grid. So the provides visual comparison of how two variables are related or vary with each other. So along the x-axis or the horizontal line, it often measures units of time, while along the y-axis or the vertical axis usually indicates quantity or percentage. So it does not represent specific data as well as tables do, but often are able to show relationships more clearly than tables do. They can depict multiple series and are useful for time series data and frequency distribution. Also, it's used to show a change in direction. It shows specific values of data, reveals trends and relationships between data, and compares trends in different groups. So this is a sample of a plotting of a trend over time. So this is the fluctuation of labor from January to July. And if you look here, this is the number of students at Andrew High School who are members of the labor force. Now, it's scaled using the intervals on the y-axis, while the time variable is plotted on the x-axis. So the actual numbers is 252 in January, 252 in February, 255 in March, 256 in April, 282 in May, 290 in June, and 319 in July. So we plotted the number of students who were working according to the months that they were working here. So you see this trend here. So you can see that the number of group students here have been increasing slowly between January to June. So that's the trend over time. Now, another sample could be when you compare two related variables. Example would be to check the average number of dollars donated by the age of the donors. So if you look here, the trend shows that if you're older, like when you're 19, you tend to give more, as opposed to when you're 15 years old, you tend to give an average of less than 40. If you're 17, you tend to give more than around $84. And again, when you're 19, you tend to give $110. So again, there seems to be a trend that when your age is going higher, what you're donating is also going higher here. So however, graphs can give us a distorted image of the data. We have to remember that if the scales on the axis of a line graph force data to appear a certain way, then a graph can even reveal a trend that is entirely different from the one which is intended. So when the intervals between two adjacent points, for example, may be dissimilar, or when the same data charted in two graphs using different scales appear different. So if you look here, in this drawing, is the number of guilty crime offenders in Grishamville. So if you use a scale of 350 to 430 as we use in this line graph, no, it would look here that as if the number of cases tend to be dropping between January to April significantly. No, but again, the scale they use is 350 to 450 rather than 0 to 450. If you use a proper scale, which depicted the used 0 to 450, it is better to show that the decline is actually much smaller than how it would appear in the first graph. So again, you have to use the proper scaling so you do not misrepresent the numbers that we actually get. No, it looks quite different. Now, other use is when you could use multiple line graphs in this. So it's easy to see from this chart that total cell phone users has been rising steadily from 2012, no, except for 2015, there was a slight dip. And then otherwise it went up until 2018. Now, the multiple line graph can actually show, for example, if you break down the women and the men, no, who are users, and you note there's only a very small discrepancy between them. So they still tend to follow the main line, but it's good to see that there were years where there were more women compared to men using the cell phones like in 2015, 2016, although the differences was only small. Now, the technique used to classify either discrete. Now, the next thing that we're going to discuss is the stem and leaf plot or the stem plot. So it's used to classify either discrete or continuous variables, and it's used to organize as they are collected. So it can look like a bar graph, but made of numbers. So each number in the data is broken down into a stem and a left. So the stem of the number includes all but the last digit, while the leaf of the number will always be a single digit. Again, the first digits of the number are the stem, while the last digit is the leaf. So everything except the last digit is the stem, and the last digit is the leaf. So tally marks are not required because the actual data are used. Usually uses whole numbers. If we use a decimal point, they can be rounded to the nearest whole number. No, if you want. It can appear like a bar graph when it is turned on its side. So it presents how the data are spread. You can see the highest number, the lowest number, the most common numbers, and the outliers. So when you say it's an outlier, it's a number that lies outside the main group of numbers. So the main advantage of this method, the stem and leaf plot, is data are grouped and all the original data are shown. So again, on the left-hand side, we write down all the numbers except the last one. So those are the stems. So we draw a line to the right of the stems. On the other side will be where you write down the last digit or the leaves. So for example, if you have a value of 25, the stem is 2 and the leaf is 5. If the value is 369, the stem is 36 and the leaf is 9. If then the value is 23.7, then the stem is 23 and the leaf is 7. If there are too many numbers, you could actually round off the 23.7 to 24, so you can limit the number of stems. So an example would be if a patient gave questions to his class, no, and gave out 20 geography questions, then each student is supposed to write down score. So every day, a student named Elliot would write down all his scores. For example, his score was 3, so that stem would be 0 and 0, and his actual leaf would be 3. If his score was 6, then it would be under place appear like this. If his score was 5, then it would be stem 0, leaf 5. If his score was 10, then his stem is 1, while his leaf is 0. If his score was 11, then stem 1, then leaf 1. No? If his score was 14, then stem 1, leaf 4. So on and so forth. So if he had a perfect score, 20 out of 20, then his stem is 2, while his leaf is 0. And if he had 4 quizzes with a score of 20, then it would appear as such. So another would be, for example, if a student would make a student write down their book reports for the last 12 months, and they would ask them how many books they made. So, for example, if a student had 12 books to read, then they will plot it as stem 1, leaf 2. Well, the student who had read 23 books, then you write down a stem of 2 with a leaf of 3. The stem of 19 would appear stem 1, leaf 9. If the number was 6, then you write stem of 0 and leaf of 6. Then if the number is 10, then stem 1, then leaf 0, and so on and so forth. Again, it's a tip that if there's only a single number, you could write 0 before the number so that you can use 0 as the stem. So it looks like that. So you could also put your stem and leaf plot in order, which means you simply have to categorize the numbers. So if you look again, the number was for the book reports, no, 067. Then the stem 1 is leaf 29052. Stem 2 was 351. So if you make this in order, you simply reshuffle it and place them in an ordered system. So stem 0 would still have leaf 6, 7. Stem 1 would change in that the leaf would become 02259 instead of 29052. For stem 2, their leaf would be ordered. It would look 135 instead of the original 351. Now, 15 people, if another sample would be 15 people were asked how often they drove to work over 10 working days, and the number of time each person was stated as, for example, 5 times, 7 times, 9 times, and such. So if you place them in ordered system and leaf plot, then it would appear as stem 0, and then the leaf would be 0 for those who did not drive, and then 1 for those who drove once, and so on and so forth. But since it was in order, then it was placed in this manner rather than randomly, no? Or rather than the way they appeared, like 5, 7, 9. It appeared in this order already. So you could also split the stems. This is useful if you have a very high number already of leaves. So you could designate, for example, that the stem would designate, for example, instead of 0 to 9, you could designate it 0 to 4 and then 5 to 9. And then those which fall 0 to 4 would have their leaves placed on the first stem. Well, those whose numbers fell between 5 and 9 would place it in the stem 0, 5 and will appear as such 5, 5, 7, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9. So for more samples, since I know this is a bit, we don't really use it that often. So if you have a swimmer named Brittany who's been training and then would do 50-meter laps each day for 30 days, these are the number of laps she's won each day. So for example, these were the raw data here. And then if you place them in a plot, on an ordered stem and left plot, then it would appear with a stem 1, leaf 0, 8, and 9. So that means 10, 18, and 19. That's laps per day. Stem 2, that's the between 20 to 29. So that means Brittany swam 20, 21, 22, 22, 24, and so on until 29 laps per day. Well, stem 3 would show here 31, 31, 32, and 39 laps of swimming each day. So again, the last number is what you place in the leaf. For the other numbers you place on the stems so that you can categorize them. We can also redraw the stem and leaf by splitting the stems into 5-unit intervals like what we did earlier. This is for the same data used by Brittany who swam, no? So you could break down the stem 1 for the 0 to 5, rather 0 to 4, then 5 to 9. Then the stem 2 can be divided to 20 to 24. Stem 25 can be from 25 to 29. Stem 30 would be stem 31 to 35, while stem 35 would be from stem 36 to 39. And this is how it would appear, no? The same thing can be done even if we have the decimal place. So again, we use the last number, place that on the leaf. No? So for example, in this data where you have the weights of the 30 students were being measured. So if you have, for example, a weight of 56.3, then the data they place stem 56, leaf 3. Then there was no 57 kilograms. So you continued those with 58 kilograms. So that would be 58 stem, then leaf 4. So that's 58.4 kilograms, another 58.4 kilograms, and another 58 then kilogram, which is 0.9. So then you plotted the other weights like 59 kilograms, 59.2 kilograms, 59.3, 59.8. Those in the 60 kilograms appear as such, 61, 62. Then the heaviest, which is 65.7 kilograms, which appear as such. So as I stated earlier, you could actually invert your stem and leaf plot, and this is how it would appear. Then this actually looks like like a bell-shaped curve, no? So it shows us the frequency of where most of the data is located and the actual numbers of the data which we plotted. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doc Mark. Any question? Isang bagsak na, Doc Cash pala. Sorry. Isang bagsak na palakpak. Napaka-comprehensive ng kanyang report. Any question, Bob? So again, you just have to determine the box, the line chart and the stem and leaf plot. I think that's a stem, not a stem. Yung stem plot is just like your bar graph also, and in a way parang histogram. Pag binaliktad mo, makikita mo yung frequency distribution. We will be talking about the frequency distribution. What is a bell shape, bell diagram, etc. as a statistical question. But anyway, again, this is still another option where you can utilize in presenting your data. So any question with the line chart and then the stem and leaf plot? So stem and leaf plot, again, DocCast is for smaller number of data, no? You cannot utilize this for a large number kasi otherwise, ang hirap, hindi na siya mag-perform into a
Yeah.
7-leaf plan.
Yes, Doc. Masyadong madami. If there are too many datas, it would be very complicated, the table.
It's very complicated. But then, the good thing with the 7-leaf plot is at a glance, you can see the distribution of data, whether it
Yes,
is
Doc.
a bell shape or we call that a well-distributed data or katulad ng histogram kanina, skewed to the left, skewed to the right, if there is a discrepancy in the distribution. Okay. Any question? Any more question for this before we proceed to the other types? Okay. If none, let's go to the box plot, and the pictograph. The box plot and the pictograph is especially the box plot is for a bigger sample. So it will be discussed by Doc Ami.
Yes, po. Allow me to share my screen. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to discuss about the box plot and the pictograph. So one of the best ways to analyze any process is to plot the data. A box plot is a graphical way that summarizes the important aspects of the distribution of numeric data. Box plot is also referred to as a box and whisker plot as it displays the data in a box and whisker formats. Box plots can be drawn either vertically or horizontally. The length of the box plot indicates the spread of the data. Box plots are widely used in statistics, process improvement, scientific research, economics, and in social and human sciences. Box plot is mainly used to explore data as well as to present the data in an easy and understandable manner. They provide a quick way for examining the central tendency and variation present in the data, and a wider range box plot indicates more variability. The same continuous data can be presented graphically using histograms and box plots. Box plot is useful when comparing between several data sets, comparing central tendency and variability. However, box plot is less detailed than histograms and take up less space, which allows easy comparison of multiple data sets. Box plot is used to check if there is a significant difference in the process after implementing process improvement in terms of central tendency and variability. So like histograms, box plot is used for moderate to large amount of data. The size of the box plot can vary significantly if the data size is too small. A box plot is made up of a box and two whiskers. So the whiskers represent all data values and the maximum length of a whisker is 1.5. Box plots summarize key statistics from the data, including the mean, maximum, and minimum values, as well as the lower and upper quartiles. So the box plot, here in the box plots, the data is plotted such that each section represents 25% of the data. So the box indicates the range in which the middle 50% of all values lie. Thus, the lower end of the box is the first quartile, and the upper end is the third quartile. Therefore, 25% of the data are above Q3. In the box, we find 50% of our data, and 25% of the data are below Q1. So the range between Q1 and Q3 is called interquartile range. When the median line is not present in the box plot, it suggests that it coincides with one of the quartiles. Box plots, sometimes they display the mean with a special character, like here, the dot. Other characters can indicate the mean, such as diamond, a plus, or a dotted line, and others. Any data beyond the whiskers are considered outliers. Outliers often reflect errors in data recording or data entry. If the values are real, you should investigate what was going on in the process at that time. So box plot can tell whether the distribution is symmetrical or skewed. So in a symmetric distribution, the mean and median are nearly the same, and the two whiskers has almost the same length. So let us try to make a box plot and whisker plot. So the following data set below shares a basketball player's points scored per game over a 7-game span. So step one, the first step to creating a box and whisker plot is to arrange the values in the data set from the least to greatest. So in this example, arrange the points scored per game from least to greatest. So here 5, 10, 16, 17, 18, 20, and 32. Step two, identify the upper and lower extremes. So the highest and lowest values in the data set. The lower extreme is the smallest value, which is 5 in this example, and the upper extreme is the highest value, which is 32 in this example. Step three, we identify the mean or the middle of the data set. So in this example, the median is 17. Step four, we identify the upper and lower quartiles. To find the lower quartile and the upper quartile, start by splitting the data set at the median into the lower and upper regions. So the lower region here are the 16, 10, and 5, and the upper 18, 20, and 32. The upper quartile is the median of the upper region and the lower quartile is the median of the lower region. So in this example, the upper quartile is 20 and the lower quartile is 10. Now we have all the information that we will need to construct our box and whisker plot. So step 5, we will construct a box and whisker plot. To construct a box and whisker plot, we start by drawing a number line that fits the data set. Start by plotting the points over the number line at the lower and upper extremes, the median, and the lower and upper quartiles. Next, construct two vertical lines through the upper and lower quartiles, and then constructing a rectangular box that encloses the median point value. Then construct a vertical line through the median point that extends to the top and bottom of the rectangle. This is the box in the box and whisker plot. Finally, draw a horizontal line that connect the lower quartile to the lower extreme and the upper quartile to the upper extreme to complete the box and whisker plot. So this is an example of a box plot comparing the fertilizer. So here in this box plot, fertilizer 2 appears to have a higher yield value than fertilizer 1. Another example for the presence of diabetes, here it is evident that females have in general higher glucose values than males. Advantages of a box plot and whisker plots are the following. They provide a graphic display of variables, location and spread or dispersion at a glance. They provide some indication of the data symmetry and skewness. And like many other methods of data display, they show outliers, and they can easily be used to compare data sets. However, the disadvantages, they tend to emphasize the tails of a distribution, which are the least certain points in the data set, and they hide many details of the distribution. So there are many applications and online services that allow the creation of box plots quickly and easily, such as the Minitab, GMP, and SPSS. For the pictograph, a pictograph or pictogram represents the frequency of data as pictures or symbol. Each picture or symbol may represent one or more units of the data. So for example, the following table shows the number of computers sold by a company for the months January to March. So we will construct a pictograph for the table. So here in our pictograph, one computer icon represents 5 computers. For the month of January, we have 5 times 5 plus 25. So February, we have 35 computers. And for the March, we have 20 computers. So for pictograph, advantages is it's easy to read, it's visually appealing. However, the disadvantages, they are difficult to draw. Icons must be of consistent size, and it's best only for 2 to 6 categories and very simplistic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doc Almi. Ganda ng very detailed. So, bago natin makalimutan pala, isang bagsak na palakpak. Yan. Sige. Any question? Question po? Question? So, box plot is for more number of categories as well as samples, no? Pag malakihan na yung ina-analyze mo, it will be parang to-tone down mo into a smaller portion that mas mabilis siyang maintindihan. It is divided into quartiles. So the technique on how to use this one will be learned by you kung paano nyo nagamitin ito. Kasi it is a little bit complicated, but once na nakuha mo yung technique on how to do it in quartiles, then this is most appropriate for big data. So you just take a look at the box and the whiskers. The longer the whiskers, the more data is concentrated in there. So it's as simple as that. Parang stem plot lang din. Okay, and with the pictograph, of course, pictograph is, I think, is the most interesting way to attract attention from your readers and as well as to explain things in a very simple way. Now, the limitation is, again, for a smaller number of data or smaller number of categories. Okay, and make sure to always present or make a legend of the value in which a picture would represent. No? For example, yung isang computer, ilan yung pinire-represent niyang value, so that it will be more appropriate to explain the details of your data. Any question? Any question, Bob? Any question?
Wala na.
If none, let's proceed to the flowchart and Gantt chart by Doc Flo. So again, these are different tools, no, where you can utilize to present your data. So it has its own advantages and disadvantages, and make sure to identify the type of data you are representing or you want to present, so that you will utilize also the appropriate type of presentation. Okay, let's proceed, Dr. Flores.
So again, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to present about flowchart and Gantt chart. So what is flowchart? Flowchart, also called as process flowchart or process flow diagram. The main purpose of flowchart is communication. It is a step-by-step process using shapes or boxes connected by arrows that indicates the flow of direction. These arrows are called flow line. It is a generic tool that can be adapted for a wide variety of purposes and can be used to describe various processes such as manufacturing processes, the administrative or service processes, or a project plan. The most common elements that may be included in flowcharts are sequence of actions like from the start to finish, then the materials or services entering or leaving the processes like the inputs, outputs, examples like documents, instructions, or findings during the process. There are also parts in the flowcharts wherein decision making must also be made. Also included in the flowchart are people and time involved and in each step and process measurements. So when do we use flowchart? Flowchart is usually used in order to document the process, in order to develop understanding of how the process is done in one glance. It is also used to study a process for possible renovation or improvement, and also to communicate how the process is done in order to have a better understanding between people involved. And lastly, it can also be used when planning a project. Flowchart basic procedures. So how to make a flowchart. So first is to define the process to be diagram. Write the title at the top of the flowchart, then discuss and decide on the boundaries of the process. Where or when does the process start? Where or when does it end? Discuss and decide on the level of details to be included in the diagram. After that, brainstorming are done of all the people involved, then arrange the activities in proper sequence. Then when all activities are included and everyone agrees that the sequence is correct, draw an arrow to show the flow of the process. Then lastly, review the flowchart with others involved in the process to see if everybody agree to the process and agree that the process is drawn accurately. So what are the common symbols used in flowcharts? So we have the box, which represents instructions or actions. The step is written in the box. Usually one arrow goes out of this box. Then we have the arrow or direction of flow from one step or decision to another. Then we have this diamond box. It indicates when decisions are to be made. The question is written in the diamond box. Usually more than one arrow goes out in the diamond, each one showing direction the process takes for a given answer to a question. Example, yes or no. Then other, we have the parallelogram that indicates inputs or output. We can put some inputs in this box, and then usually can two arrows or one arrows can come out of this box. So we also have this uh, rhomboid shape for documents, and lastly we have a rectangular or elongated circle or oblong, usually used for symbols to start and end points of the process. These are also called terminals. For example, we have this flow chart. So in this chart, we have the starting point, elongated circle. Then the finish point is also being used is the elongated circle. Then we have the boxes. In this chart, we use rectangles. Then we have the diamond box that indicate decisions are to be made. The questions are put in the diamond box. Then usually two arrows come out of this box. Then another example is we have the parallelogram where we can put some inputs and outputs like the temperature, then another, then usually input that the findings in the, for example, when we take a temperature, we can put it there in the parallelogram, then followed by diamond box if it is a question, if the temperature is less than 32 or more than, then usually two arrows came out of the diamond box. Then again, parallelogram, we can put outputs if it is below or above freezing point. Then we have the elongated circle for the end of the flow chart. So another chart I'm going to discuss is about Gantt chart. Gantt chart is a type of bar chart that illustrate a project schedule. This chart lists the tasks to be performed in the vertical axis and time intervals on the x-axis or horizontal axis. The width of the horizontal bars in the graph shows the duration of each activities. Gantt chart illustrates the start and finish dates of a project. So what are the benefits of Gantt chart? There are several benefits of Gantt charts. First, the charts identify the tasks that may be executed in parallel and those that can't be started or finished until the others are complete. Second, it can help detect potential bottleneck or overlap of activities in a given time and identify tasks that may have been excluded from the project timeline. Third, the chart depicts things like task lapse time or additional time for completion of tasks that should not delay the project. And lastly, it can also show us in one glance the non-critical activities that can be delayed and the critical activities that must be executed on time. What are the components of Gantt chart? Gantt charts can vary in complexity and depth, but will always have three components. First are the activities or tasks that are to be done running along the y-axis or vertical line. Then second, the milestone or progress stages or the time indicated along the x-axis or horizontal line. And lastly, the progress bars denoted in the horizontal bars, and it shows how far along each task is at any given point. So bottom line, Gantt chart is a visual description of a project timeline. The chart shows the start and end dates of a project components, and it is recommended to help organize the various tasks within the project. So for example, example of Gantt chart, like we have activity ABCD written in horizontal or y-axis, and then the duration or time for like in days, years, or months. Then we have the milestone or progress stages indicating within the graph, the horizontal progress bars denoted as horizontal bars within the graph, and it shows the task, how long the task is at a given point. So like for example, the activity A, the first is activity A, it is done first then before activity B can be done, activity A should be finished first, and so on and so forth. So Gantt chart can tell us our activity of our project, if we are on time or delay. So thank you, Doc. That's all, Doc.
Okay, thank you, Doc Flo. Isang bagsak na palakpak naman kay Doc Flo. Very good. Any question? Any question with the flow chart and the Gantt chart? With the flow chart, just remember, when you're doing your flow chart, this is mostly for descriptive type kasi wala namang numbers yan. So you just show flow of events. When you're describing events that happens from one step to another, you can use the flow chart. In flow chart, you just cannot use any type of figure na gusto mo. Gusto ko yata ang diamond ngayon. Gusto ko yata yung star ngayon. No, it's not. No? There are guides for you to use certain specific diagrams. Like for example, the start of a process is usually presented by oblong. Okay, start and finish. For the in process is rectangular. Decision boxes are in diamond. Okay, so hindi ka po pwedeng gumamit ng kung anong gusto mo. Gusto ko yatang gumamit ng star. Gusto ko yatang gumamit ng yan. It's not. So there's a proper way of using your flow chart. And your Gantt chart is parang diary ito. So this will indicate, kunyari doon sa design mo, you want to accomplish things in proper time. Meron kang time element na sinusunod, you can use your Gantt chart. Okay? So any more question?
Wala.
Wala. Okay, I think it's already 4:30. I can make some negotiations with you. Kasi masyado na tayong late. It would be too much. What if we will continue our discussion? We still have a lot of reporters to finish, starting with Dr. Acer Ray to Dr. Mark. I think masyado na kayong wala nang pumapasok sa utak nyo ngayon, sigurado ako. So wala din kayong matututunan dito sa susunod. So we will utilize instead, anyway, this is designed naman talaga for session 4 is for your research ethics proposal and so on and so forth. So with that, we will still have one meeting. Dapat kasi bakasyon nyo na by next week. The only thing that you can do is your exam. Pero since for the benefit of time, wala naman na tayong matatapos pag ipipilit pa natin, we will utilize instead our last session for the rest of the reporters. So starting with Sir Ray. Sir Ray, Doc Lai, Doc Richelle, and so on down the line. So we will have our session 4 next meeting next Sunday. So that would you like me to move your final exam?
Yes
And
po.
how far from Sunday? Kasi we will be
What?
1 week kasi after our last discussion, your grade shall be submitted. So we can negotiate for that. Our last meeting will be on November 5. So your final proposal, definitely you will not be passing your final proposal today because hindi pa natin natapos yung research proposal. So instead of passing your proposals today, it will be on November 5 instead. So mag-extend tayo ng 1 week. But for your final exam, please let me know anytime from November 5 to November 11. You can take your exam anytime from that.
Doc, November 11 na lang para Saturday.
Yeah, it's okay. And then Saturday 1 p.m. to Sunday 1 p.m.
Yes, Doc. I don't know with my
For the
grade, Doc.
final exam. For the final proposal, again, deadline will be on November 5, 12 midnight. Clear?
Yes,
But
Doc.
for
Yes,
the
Doc.
exam, you're supposed to take your final exam on November 5, right? But since hindi pa tayo tapos, gagamitin natin yung last session natin for actual discussion, we might as well extend or reschedule your final exam. And how would you like that to happen? No need to move. 24 hours to complete naman. Okay, Doc Mark said that November 5 will still be the same for your final exam. Okay lang sa inyo?
Pwede lang daw kasi 24 hours naman din po yung availability.
Kasi kung sakaling sa November 5, matatapos tayo ng siguro mga 3 o'clock. Mabilis lang naman na tayo. Mas konti na lang yung Then you can start your exam anytime, mga 4 o'clock naman na siguro. I-extend na lang natin yung time. So instead of 1 p.m., you can start counting by 5 na lang siguro.
Pwede nga po i-start review before the exam po eh.
5 to 5 na. 5 p.m., you can start your exam 5 p.m., then till 5 p.m. the next day.
Okay.
Yes, Doc. Thank you, Doc.
Very good. So, sorry for the delay. Meron pa tayong at least 7 yata. But since limit your presentation to 5 minutes lang naman. So I think we can finish this one. All right. Okay. So if there's no more question, I don't want to liquefy your brains. Kasi yung span of attention natin is talagang 2 hours lang eh. So more than that, alam ko naglolokohan na lang tayo.
Sir, question po.
Yes, Doc May.
Yung reports namin na isi-send po sa inyo through your email po?
No, through
Viber.
Through Canvas. I-upload nyo as assignment.
Sa assignment 2 po?
So i-transfer nyo lang siya as PDF file. Not PowerPoint. So convert yung PowerPoint to PDF, then yung PDF yung file na i-upload nyo dun sa Zoom.
So if ever po kung nakapass na po nung assignment po, mag-resubmit containing the report na po? Okay.
You're talking about the whole group? Yung individual assignment kasi, your report, you will be submitting that through the assignment section, di ba?
Yes po.
But instead of a PowerPoint format, transform it into a PDF. That is for the individual reporting. Another one, your group coordinators or anybody who can do that will collect all the reports, make it into one file, and then you can submit that one. Yeah, kahit sa na lang, sa Viber or sa email, and then ako na lang magpapublish dun sa module. Yung
Okay
yung
po.
sa Paranaque, maganda na yan eh. Ang ganda na ng format ninyo, pare-parehas. I think i-collect nyo lang yon, Dr. Rochelle, and then pagdugtong-dugtungin mo lang lahat, transform it to PDF, send it to me through Viber or sa email. Then I will upload it sa Zoom para meron kayong reference doon.
Thank you po, sir.
But yung individual report shall be, passing will be individual as well. So assignment portion.
Okay po.
Okay, so if no more question, alam ko bored na kayo, magsisimba pa yung iba, magdi-dinner pa yung iba. So I would have to see you next time. Okay?
Doc, picture muna tayo, Doc.
Yeah, oo nga, I will forget again. Yan. Okay. Sa mga iba hindi pa nakapag-report ha, next meeting na lang. Save the energy. Okay, sinong magpipicture pa? Sino magpipicture?
Nakuha ko na po, Doc. Sasend ko na lang sa Viber.
Okay, very good. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a nice weekend. See you.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Doc.